Hello, my name's Scott. I'm with Aphrodite and Sacs, and today we're going to talk about the running of Sacs. And so this is a very quick and dirty video, so you're going to have to excuse the cuts and all that, but we're going to be taking off today. So I just want to try to transfer as much information about Sacs as I can, so that when you come along to drive Sacs, you've kind of got a head start on the process, the systems, and how the boat maneuvers. So that's what we're going to do today. So the first thing that typically would happen is you'll show up to the boat, and this is what you would see. The cushions may be down, they may be out, hopefully they'll be down. We'll get to that in just a second. The cover will be on, and the battery switch will be off. So Allison's going to turn on the battery switch to all. Okay, that'll be the first thing that you do when you get to the boat, is turn on the power. The next thing is you're going to take off this cover. Now we'd be delicate with all this stuff because it's, you know, it sits out in the sun, and slide this cover off. Give it a little roll up. Now I'm going to put on my sunglasses, not because I'm trying to be rude, but because it my vision. I'm out here in the bright sun. Okay, once you get the battery switch on, there's two switches that you want to turn on pretty quick. The first one is blower, and we'll get back to the blower in a second. And the second one is bilge. Okay, there's two bilges on the boat. There's one that's in the that's the back section that holds the engine, so there's like an aluminum box back there. And then there's a second one that's in the main hull. The main hull only fills up if rainwater got in there. The back section, there's like an aluminum box that the outboards mount to, and that kind of fills up with water just sitting here. And that one's a little bit of a problem. We want to pump that one out because that adds a bunch of weight to the boat, a bunch of weight right in the stern, which kind of ruins the trim. You can see that that we're pumping because there's the water pumping out. And that's on the list of things to be fixed. So maybe by now that's been fixed. Okay, so you've turned on the bilge, you've turned on the blower. The next thing to do is right down here by my toe. That's the blower outlet, and so you just kind of come down and give a little sniff. You may smell a little bit of petrol vapors, gasoline vapors, but you don't want to smell strong gasoline. The main petrol tank is under about here, and so in the unlikely event, very unlikely event, that let's say that petrol tank went bad and maybe failed in some way, then or maybe one of the hoses burst or something like that, and it may have put petrol in the bilge. So that's why you give that little smell. Chances are very slim. Okay, the next thing that you would do is you take these throttles and bring them back to the middle position, right there. Now we're going to cover that in a minute because this is kind of important. You really want to remember that, because what could happen is we slide these throttles into this position when we put the cover on, so that when the cover's on and nobody can see, if they come around this corner and the throttles are up, they could hit them, break them, and they're not they're not strong. You can't tie the boat to them or anything, and so we keep them in this up position. But what you don't want to do then is walk over and try to start the engine, and the next thing you know, you've got your throttles in max position. And I'll show you a little bit later that the engines do indeed start with the throttles engaged. And so, okay, so the next thing that you would do is walk over here, kind of put your nails under this little corner right here, tip this little vessel, flip the compass guy forward like that, take the okay, and then at the same time we're going to pull this cover. Let's talk about the chart plotter for a second. And we put the covers down below. We're trying to make a little cover holder, but we don't have it yet. But in the meantime, you put the covers down below because you're going to want to put the covers back on when we finish. You push this power button right here up in the upper that little corner right there. We're waiting right here. This guy's got a countdown on, was it 133? Then it comes up to the I agree. When it comes up to I agree, when the screen shows I agree, hit enter. Now the satellites are gonna start to come up, and then you work page. You might have to work page a few times, scrolling through until you get to the chart. You can in and out on the chart to get more detail or less detail, depending. And it's got the charts for the med, which is where this boat's going to be used. There's another little neat feature here. You can go full map, and that gets rid of all your numbers and everything, and just shows the whole chart. Or you can show data, and then you got your data back. If you got a question mark over the little triangle, the little triangle's the boat. If you got a question mark over the little triangle, then that means that it hasn't found its fix yet, and normally you just have to wait about another minute. Okay, so now we come back over to starting up the engines. Okay, so we put the keys in, turn the key 2 spots. You should hear that beep. Make sure you don't go to the 3rd spot because the engines will start, and the engines will always be tipped up when you get here. When you leave, the engines are always tipped up. So to tip the engines down, we're going to come to this little shifter right here, and I'll go over this. You use both right in the center of the left-hand shifter, and the engine should be tipping down. Okay, when both engines are all the way down, you'll hear a little change in tone, and then you're good to go. Be careful not to take, like, let's say just the left engine and then the right engine and tip them down. The engines are attached together with a tie rod, a steering tie rod. And so if you ran them together, if you ran one engine down accidentally and not the other one, you're going to stress that tie rod. It's not probably going to break anything. It's just not good for the whole steering system. You'll notice that the steering here doesn't actually move, and it doesn't move efficiently. You can move the engines, but not well. That's because we have power steering, and once the engines are running, then the power steering will take over. Okay, so we come back over here to our little throttle. You'll see transfer. Transfer will be lit, and that's because the transfer will be lit because there's no other steering station. If there were 2 steering stations in the transfer, you'll have to transfer between them, but in this case not. There's the dock switch right here. See how that just lit? Okay, what that does is it limits the throttle and the throttle response. And right now these throttles are set, so if you put the engines in gear, let's say, and you start to give it throttle, nothing really happens till you get about halfway, then the throttle start to ramp up. And if you were in dock mode, as we are right now, then what happens is when you actually go to throttle up, you don't get nearly as much power, and you got to give it much more power on the levers or much more actuation on the levers to get the same power out of the engines. Once you get used to the boat, you don't use dock mode anymore, but if you're still getting used to the boat and you're around a bunch of other boats, what it does is it kind of prevents you from coming into the dock and realizing, oh, I need to burst forward, and giving a little burst forward, and the next thing you know, the boat's doing 8 knots, because the boat does 30-some knots, so it prevents you from rocketing around the marina and hitting other boats, and so that's the idea of dock mode. There's one other one here that you may end up using, and that's sync. If you're running along and you see one RPM is 2700 and the other one is 2600, and you can kind of play with the throttles a little bit to try to get the engines more in tune with each other, or you can just push sync. And as soon as you push sync, then the engines themselves will automatically sync. And what that does, it prevents a resonance from forming. One engine starting to build up on the other one. You'll hear, if you were really listening, you'll hear woo, woo, woo. And that's not good for the drivetrain. It's not going to really break anything. It's just not good for the system. So once you're up to speed, then you use sync. Okay, so now we're sitting here. We got our engines down. We look back at that. That's good. And our engines are in neutral. Now I'm going to take these engines. I'm actually going to set them in idle ahead, and I'm going to try to start one engine. So here we go. And that time it didn't start. Earlier I got them to start this way. Okay, so now when you go to start an engine, you just click the key and then release, and the computer takes care of everything else. So the computer will spin the engine and release the now I see a spot on the lens, so just excuse me coming right over to your TV like that. Okay, so now the engines are running. We're going to let those warm up for maybe 10 minutes or so while we're getting the rest of the boat ready. And so the rest of the boat is all getting ready. I'm going to go over these other switches while the engines are warming up. Tricolor light right here is the red and the green. Steaming is the white all-around light up on the top. Horn is the horn. Anchor, this is our anchor up and down. And see how I can control that from here? When I was controlling that anchor just now, I got a battery alarm over here, which I'll hit enter. That's probably just because the engines have to charge up the batteries for a few minutes. A couple other, then there's also hatch up. Blower and bilge we've already talked about. Deck lights are kind of cool. You can use those at night. And if you turn on the deck lights, it's the lights that are back up behind up here in should see those going, see them up here? And you should see them going off and on there. So that's kind of cool. That if you're hanging out at night and relaxing, you can run the deck lights. Down below here, there's another electrical panel, and that one has the switches. I'm not going to go into all those right now because they're still mislabeled. But those have the switches like the carpet lights for your feet and that type of thing. And also the water pump. You do need to know about this one, the very bottom one, which is the water pump. You turn that on for water. Right now, the pressure gauge isn't really working on the water pump, so you turn it on, you use the water, and then turn it off. Eventually, probably we'll get that switch replaced. Those always go out on those water pumps. We'll get that switch replaced, and then you'll be able to just turn it on at the beginning of a trip. Okay, so now we come back here to, let's say we're going to get underway. Well, first let's talk about maneuvering a little bit. When you go to maneuver, you have two places that you can be sitting. See how these guys go? You can sit here like this when you're driving, with your feet down on with your feet in this little spot, and then you've got this guy. See that little button right there? I can change that button, and that repositions the steering wheel for whatever position that I want. Push it down, you get your tip, put the wheel in whatever position you want. Oftentimes what happens is, for better visibility, we lift up and let this seat drop. Then you sit on this spot, and you're kind of up here on the perch. So you got your choice, whatever's more comfortable. The engines are they're very simple, just a single lever shifting per engine. Pump forward, and that's it. That engine's in gear and trying to push us. This engine's in gear, and they're running. They're very quiet. And now there's two ways that you can maneuver the boat, and this is the important part. We kind of just got over the little systems and how you would start up the boat. Now comes the really important part. You've got two methods for driving, and they both work equally well. But you can only use one or the other. So the first one is that you drive the boat, even though she's got two outboards, you drive her as a single outboard. So you put both engines in gear simultaneously. I'm just going to let her pull up against her lines. And if you want to drive to the left, you drive to the left. To the right, you just turn to the right. And if you're in tight places and maneuvering, let's say as we would be in a marina, then you might point your props. Let's say I want to pull the stern to starboard and put it in reverse, and just let the props drag the stern around in reverse. So that's a very valid way of driving, and it's what many people use, and it's all that you would use if you only had a single outboard. But because we have two outboards, even though they're very close together, we get a lot of twisting motion. So the other method. Oh, battery's going down. Okay, be just a second. We'll be right back with you. Okay, so we're back. A little battery change there, technical startup, and I didn't drink any water while we were going. So eventually my voice will run out here. Okay, so we were talking about maneuvering. So we just finished with being able to use both outboards, sync together, running together, and just as if you were using a single outboard. But we also have two engines, so we can twist. Now twisting that's kind of like a little bit more advanced, but really it's not very difficult. I'll walk you through it, and you'll be able to do it. The first thing is, both engines have to be pointed straight ahead. This is really important. Now this is why I'm saying you've got your choice. You can either run the engines together and run both engines together, shifting as using them as one outboard, or you can put the engine straight ahead and twist. But you can't do both. In other words, you can't put the engines hard over and now try to twist, because the props will just cavitate. And what that means is that the props won't be able to grip the water efficiently unless we have the engine straight ahead. Because already, if you look at those engines, you'll see that they're very close together. So you think about the lever arm between the two props. There's not a lot of grab between those two props already. So as soon as we turn the engines to the side, you'll hear them cavitate. And so let's say that we wanted to twist the bow to. I'll twist the bow to port. Okay. So I put my port engine in the stern, my starboard engine in forward, and even though we're tied up here at the dock, the twist is taking place relatively slow, but it's happening. Now you could run that twist up to about 2,500 RPMs, and if you had the forward engine in 2500, you'd have to have the stern engine in about 35, because the forward is more efficient than the reverse on the props. And that's because the props have cup and a lot of things, because they're designed to be running forward. So what that means to you is that in order not to be twisting and driving through the marina forward, that means that your stern engine has to be more than your forward engine. So your stern engine would be at 3,500 RPMs, your forward engine would be at 25. That's the max, the max, the max. Don't go more than that. And that's one of the reasons that people use the docking, because you'll get into a situation where you'll be saying, oh man, if I just had a little bit more power. Well, a little more power isn't normally what you need at that point. What you really probably need to do, if 2,500 in forward and 3,500 in reverse isn't making the twist that you're trying for, what you probably need to do is rethink the plan that you're working on, and more power probably isn't going to get you out of the situation. You go any more power, what happens is the props cavitate, and so you got more RPMs but less grip on the water, so you end up with less twist. So that's why I'm kind of giving you the maximum amount of twist. Some people get really good at this. They'll have the forward engine, let's say, in 1500 and the stern engine at 2800, and so they'll be twisting and pulling the boat backwards at the same time. And so, or you could do the same thing. You could be twisting and pushing the boat forward very slowly while you come out of the marina. And so that may be something that I put that out there so that as you slowly learn how to make the twist, then. But in the meantime, what you want is you just want to hold the boat in position while you twist. And so if you're twisting to port, you're making this motion right there. If you're twisting to starboard, you're making that motion right there. Bow to starboard, bow to port. See that? Bow to port, bow to starboard. Bow to port, and then you'll be making that, adding up a little bit of extra RPMs. And now I come back to neutral. Neutral. Let's talk about neutral for just a second. It's kind of a funny thing. There aren't really any lines on here. There's nothing. I've been thinking about putting a little label maker line across here so that you can see everything in neutral. And it's kind of funny the way that this whole system worked out. There's a neutral light down here, see? But just kind of the way when you're sitting here and the handles and the angle of you can't see the neutral light. So when the engine's in forward, like that, you can see the neutral, just like that. See, now I'm sitting in idle ahead, and I can see my neutral light, and I can see my neutral lights are out. But if I'm sitting here, oftentimes, when I'm sitting here in neutral, you can't see the neutral lights. It just kind of worked out where your eyes. So you got to be careful with this, and keep that in mind, that visual indicator, that visual cue, isn't really there where it might be. Okay, so we covered twisting. We covered running the boat, running the engines together as one outboard. So once you go out, you practice that a few times. You might have to watch this a second time. Okay, this right here, this is our safety kill cord. Okay, so if you're running along, you clip this on you somewhere. Let's say clip it on your belt, for example, or clip it on your shirt. And if you fell overboard, let's say you hit a big bump and you rolled out of the boat, then this will shut off the engine right there, and that's it. Engine's off. And there go our alarms. So turn the engine back on. You put the little key piece back in here. Put the lever up, and you're ready to go. Normally I don't see people using this, especially if there's 3 or 4 people on board. If you're taking a boat someplace and you're not clipped on, well, just keep that in mind. That if you fell overboard, I'm calling you in. You'd have a real, we're running 3, 4, 5 miles offshore. Can you swim 3 or 4, 5 miles? It's a long way and the boat would just be carrying on. You'd be watching its wake. So just consider that when you're wondering if you should clip on. Once there's 5 people on board, somebody else will come up and come back and get you. But when you're running alone, going someplace, that's you might want to just consider that. Okay, let's talk about tying up. So let's say that we're getting ready to depart. We're not actually going to depart, so I'm going to turn off the engine so that you have better hearing. Let me just go over the turning off of the engines once. Oh, you know what? Let's try this again. So now, there we go. That engine started right there. See that? And I left the engines in gear. Okay, so let's see if this one will do it. The engines are in gear. And that's it. The engine starts in gear. Now it's flashing. It may stay in neutral, but what that means is I'm going to go through the turn off, then we'll come back to that little statement right there. Turn off, just turn off the key. The engine shuts down. Done deal. Okay, that comes back to, let's say that you pulled off the cover, you're in a hurry, you know, you're out here, a great day, you got the ice chest, it's all going, and you pull off the cover, you left these guys right here in full, and you start up the engine. What's going to happen? Well, I don't know what's going to happen because I've never actually tried it, but I know when I put it in idle ahead and start the engines that the engines start. And I wouldn't expect that to be the case. At least they stay in neutral. In this case, they may start and go right to full throttle, and that would be really bad for the engines, and they're brand new engines. We want time for them to warm up, build up some oil pressure. So anyway, so I mentioned that you pull the cover, check that your levers are up. Okay, now we're going to talk about, I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you here, but you know, you can stop, reverse, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now we're going to come in and talk about leaving the dock. Okay, so I'm going to step out from the shade, so I got to put my sunglasses on. I'm really sorry for that. So let's say we step out from the dock. When we come out from the dock and we're tying up, we come back, and the first thing you look at are these stern lines. Both these stern lines right now are just a little bit loose. I'm going to turn off the bilge pump just 1 second, so that noise isn't interfering. With the video. Okay, so one thing is, see these little chafe guards? Okay, those chafe guards are there because the line occasionally rubs on the boat. So we set these chafe guards, and these chafe guards also tell you how far or how much to tie up the boat. What you want is the chafe guard right in the middle of that little chafe patch. See, so chafe guard here, the middle of the chafe guard is right on the chafe patch. Same on the other side. That tells you how far to pull the boat back and where the boat should be positioned when you finish. And so what that means is you can back up the boat and kind of get close to these rubber fenders back there. And when you get into that position, you can just grab this line. And even though the lines are slack, you don't have to like adjust everything 3 or 4 times. You just have to get that chafe guard in the center of the chafe patch, tie off the line, do the same on the other side. You can walk back to the engines. You can put the engines in idle ahead at that point, and they'll be pulling forward, and then that'll hold the boat in position while you can set up the bow line. Okay, so the bow line. Okay, we're gonna walk up to the bow. Little warning statement right here. You see me walking across these tubes? We're trying to get a cover made for the tubes right now. If you come and the boat has bare tubes like this, it's fine to walk on the tubes. If these tubes are wet, they are extremely slippery, especially if they've got some of this red sand that lands from the sky. And if you got that red sand with a little bit of water, it is so slippery. So I mention that to keep you safe. Okay, the bow. In the position where Sacs sits, you'll see that there's a splice right down here in the bow line. Okay, so normally what I do, the lines were just a little bit off when we got here this time. I get that line so that splice is just below the front of the boat. Now, another thing to notice, when this bow line comes over the boat, you've got 3 positions it could be. It could be on the top of this, it could be on the top of the horn of the cleat on the outside, it could come through the center, or it could be on the back side. When this line comes over the back side of the horn, it chafes on the boat right here. And see, that's why there's all these chafe patches and all this ugliness on the boat. But if you take the line and come on the top of the horn, on this side of the horn, and not on that side, which is kind of intuitive, but on this side of the horn, then the line doesn't chafe on the boat. And so that just makes everything last longer and less work and more play, which is our goals in life. Okay, we've got some other dock lines coming. They should be here, black dock lines. But let's say now that you've arrived to the boat, you've stepped on. Normally when we step on, we walk over the boat next to us here. So we come up over the boat next to us. Let me just cover this real quick. When we walk over the boat next to us, the Sacs will be being blown around. So let's say, stay right there for a second. Let's say that you got to reach over and grab. Everybody always wants to reach over and grabs this guy's boat. We haven't really even talked to him about climbing over his boat. So one thing I try to do is show a little bit of respect for him by not grabbing this rail right here. See that? I reach down. If I'm going to pull the boats together, I grab this rail here. This is all really strong. See? Okay, then I can pull the boats together just like that. And now if I've got like one person, they can step on board. And I'm not grabbing this because all that's, you can see it flexing, and nobody wants to see their rails flexed by somebody walking on their boat that they don't know. So now let's say you've stepped on, engines are warming up, and you've probably got 5 people that are going to be showing up. So now you got to get 5 more people on board with an ice chest, and they're going to be bringing kids and all this other stuff that happens. So what we do is we keep another bow line, and let's say it's this line, might be shoved in that little area right there. So you take this line, stretch it out till you get to this bowline. You give it a toss like this. Okay, so this one's got a bad spot, that's why we got a new line coming. Okay, so you get to about here and chuck that line over onto the dock right there. Okay, then what I do is I take this line and I just leave it sitting here, and I wait for somebody to walk by. And then when I see someone walking by, I ask them to, hey, would you take that line right there and put the eye on that black bollard right there? And so so who's ever walking by next, they'll take that line, put it on the bollard. Okay, once the line's on the bollard, then we can slacken our bow line on our port side and just let it go. And when I let it go, what I do is I take this line off and I let it sit like this. See, now the boat can move around, but it's still right here. In fact, there went somebody I could have given a little demonstration. But then now you can pull yourself in on the blue line and pull the bow of Sacs right up against the pier right here. And now the bow of the Sacs is right up against the pier, and people can just drive right on up in a car, hit one of these open spots right here, and just walk across that little pier, standing on cement. There's no trippy, rolly thing that they got to do. Grab the ice chest, everything that they got, and it just comes right up here into the center main section of the Sacs, and then you can pull yourself. And then once you got everybody loaded, you can pull your boat back over to the center where you want her. And then you've got a nice, clean, no drama load up of the boat. And one of the things that does it starts the day really nicely, because then what you don't have is somebody slipping, 3 people wondering if it's too scary to get across, somebody else trying to figure out how they're going to carry an ice chest up that little ramp, and by the time everybody gets on board, everybody's already kind of on a stress level. If you bring the boat up against the cement pier over there, by the time the people are coming on board, they're already really relaxed, or they get on board, they feel confident, and so then you're on your way. Okay, a couple other quick things that we're going to cover. One of them is the dive gear in the stern. So this back section right here. My cameraman Andy here. Hello, Andy. Just reminded me of 2 other things. Okay, to cover back to the engines for just a second. One of them is, if you're going along and you're going and you're going, you're picking up speed and you're picking up speed and you're picking up speed, next thing you know, you've got full throttles going, and the engines are running up there at like 5,000 RPMs. But that's too fast. It's too fast for the engines and too much load for the engines. And so what happens is that really the maximum RPMs of the engines when you're running should be 4,700 RPMs. And so you'll see we mark that right here, 4,700 RPMs. And so that's really important to remember that. And you'll also see when we turn these on, see we got this little starboard and we got port, and those should be green right now. Okay, if you're running the engine over 4,700 RPMs, that little green turns to red. And for those techos out there, what that actually means is that the throttle system has gone to what they call open rack or full rack. It means the engine's trying as hard as it can to build up speed, and it can't get any more speed. And so what that really means is we're doing things like burning the exhaust valves and ruining the engines, and taking the engines, and instead of, let's say, having like 7,000 hours we might get on the engine, all of a sudden we're going to get 2,000 hours on the engines, and that makes a big difference 5 years from now when it comes time to change the engines or do an oil change. So that's kind of the difference that we're looking at. The other thing is maximum efficiency is about 3,600 RPM. So if you're going along, I haven't labeled that one, but I probably should. I should put that up here somewhere, and it may be up here by the time that you get here. But the maximum efficiency is 3,600 RPMs. That means if you want to burn the least amount of fuel for the greatest amount of time, and that's running you between 16 and 20 knots. So you can start to burn almost twice as much fuel to go another 10 knots. So it takes twice as much fuel to go half again as fast. So it isn't that ridiculous if you got to get someplace. One other thing I should cover is the pounding that the boat can take. So when you get out there, you'll see that this is really a good boat. It's like, I mean, it's really a good boat. You'll see, she takes the waves really well. You'll come off of a wave and she'll just go, psh, and you go, wow, that looked like that was going to be really bad, and that just came right off the top and felt great. Okay, but I got to give you the quick warning, it's not a jet ski. It's not a 40-foot jet ski. Don't take her and come off of a wave and body slam onto the next wave. If you're going along and you're going at speed and you got to be going into the seas, turn off a little bit so that your bow's hitting a little bit to the edge. You should be getting, the critical thing is that you'll come down every now and then. Every wave's different, so you can't actually go so slow that you never actually come off a wave and go boom and hit hard. But you shouldn't be doing more than, let's say, one a minute, one every 2 minutes. And not really hard. It shouldn't be hurting your knees. And I say this because people will take these boats out and just like think that they're like a, I don't know, a carnival ride, and just take them out and just pound them, you know? And if you do, the boat won't take it. It'll take it for a while. Like, it's not going to go out and just break in half. But you could, if you tried, if you took this thing out and you wanted to break it, you could break it. So you got to go the opposite side. You got to say, I'm going to take this out and I'm going to make sure that every move I make with the boat is smooth. And so I just want to cover that because this thing is a lot of fun. It's 500 horsepower. It's a big bag of air with lots of horsepower. It's easy and fun to go on out there and drive it. But please be respectful of it and don't break the boat in half, because I know it could happen if we really tried. Okay, so now we're going to come back to the hatch and what's back there. Okay, now our hatch is kind of a it's kind of a weird deal. You give it a little, you push it to the right, and it'll try to raise, but it won't actually. Push it to the left, and it goes down. Push it to the left, and you come back here, and you give it just a little bit of a lift, and it'll almost go. Okay, give it back down again. Okay, I give it that up. I catch it right here. Okay. Once it goes that far, it'll go. So you saw that I kind of gave it a little hand lift, and then we'll talk about what's back here. Okay, so we open up the back here. This is the good part. This is what everybody's waiting for, right? What's back here? Okay, this is a sunshade right there. When you go to put up the sunshade, normally what I do is, the first thing I do is I take the sunshade and I take it up to the bow and I tie it off up on the bow, so it's going to be sitting up on the bow. That way when people walk down here, they can just walk down. If you go to put up the sunshade, there's 4 poles. Something happened to the last pole on it, and it's the boat pole. So there's like a missing pole in here. So this last side is the boat pole. Inside of here, there's 2 other poles, and they just drop into holes in the back of the boat right there. And that gives you a place that the back of the sun awning just clips right in. The front of the sun awning comes over the top of this right here, and ties off. Okay, so then and then you'll have a sun awning over the whole back. Normally what will happen is you start off the day, you can't really run with the sun awning up. So what we do is we drive out to wherever we're going to anchor or tie off to a ball, put up the sun awning, then that way everybody isn't really getting cooked. If people really want to get cooked, they can stay out on the bow. There's a big area up there, but if they don't want to really get cooked, then they come back here to the stern. And then they sit under the shade. And okay, so I'm going to take this out right now just so that we can talk about what else is up here. So what I would normally do is I would just walk this guy up here, then I'll take this line right there and just lash it off on one of these, just so that if we take a big bump and it flips overboard, you don't have to come back with a story. You come back with, yeah man, I had to pull the line and lift this thing up, rather than where'd the sun awning go? Okay, now back here are the life preservers. Normally what we do is we keep 2 of these life preservers. Let's say we keep them down here. Okay, so I normally keep 2 life preservers down there. I saw that there weren't any down there, that's why I moved that one up there. So, and that's because if you got a whole crowd on board and let's say something's going wrong, you're going along and you need a life preserver, then you got time. You can open up the hatch and get in here. But if you're just running out by yourself, then you may need a life preserver. So there's a couple down there that don't need any electricity, don't need anything. You can just get to them. Okay, now there's also a few child life preservers down here. Also back here are what that is. That's just some trash you got left. That's probably the trash bag. Normally we hang a trash bag back here somewhere. We got the wakeboard and the water skis. If you haven't wakeboarded before but you have water skied, really try the wakeboarding. The big thing is wakeboarding's a lot faster because your legs can't splay apart like they do when you're learning how to water ski, you know, and how that thing where you end up in the hospital for broken hips and all that happens with water skis. It doesn't happen with a wakeboard, so we got a wakeboard back here. The other thing is wakeboards are 8 to 10 knots of speed. Water skis are kind of 18 knots and above, you know, so you think about the impact of possibly hitting the water. So if you got people on board and they see all this stuff back here, if they're really into water skiing, it's we got the water skis. It's a 2 water ski, and you can kick off. See how you got 2 different feet things here. You start off on 2 water skis, and you kick 1 water ski off and put your second foot here and start slaloming. So it's a nice little learning kit if somebody is like really into water skiing. But if somebody hasn't water skied before, my recommendation is try them on the wakeboard. They'll progress a lot quicker, and when you're wakeboarding, you run them off to about 8 to 10 knots is the speed. The tow ropes over here for when you're towing somebody, it ties off on the port quarter of the boat. You'll see there's a couple eye loops back there. So you just tie off that line on the port quarter, and you don't actually have to make up a bridle or anything. The boat's big enough that it'll drag off of one corner, and you won't even notice it. The other thing is bottom down here is the snorkel gear, and so there should be enough all the time. This was just left over from drying last time. And there's 3 masks right there. I see we got to get some straps for those, so we'll do that. And after all the fins and everything are dry, we just set it back down in this little section right here, and put that down there, and put the masks down there. Try to set these in such a way that they don't stack up on each other, that deforms the rubber, and then the rubber sits deformed. Then when you go to get them out, the mask is all crooked or something. And I think that's about it for back here. Garbage bag, and close this. Inside of this locker right here are the spare tools, stuff like that, and the batteries that you won't need. But the spare tools are back there. A little bit of tape. Hopefully you won't need any of that. And this side has cleaning stuff. So when you finish at the end of the day, you can do a little cleaning. There's also a bucket under here, under this side. There's a bucket under here if you needed. Fire extinguishers under this side. Flare kits also under the seat right there. Probably should have covered that first, but I mentioned that flare kit. New flare kit in 2012. We put that on in July of 2012. So that's a new flare kit. And on the other side is the all-important ice chest. So how about that? Yeah, we like that. And so the well, that almost sounded like it still had, yeah, a few waters in there. So there's also this right here. This plugs into regular dock power if you need power, and then this is a little adapter so you can plug tools or whatever you need. And there's also a spare petrol can in here. We keep it empty because we don't want a can of petrol around where it could possibly get into the bilge. And so, but if you need a spare can, it's right there. One other thing, this is our fuel fill over on this side. You undo this little guy right here. See this? You undo that. You set them over here. Put your fuel container, your fuel fill in there. This thing has this amazing propensity that just as it gets full, it gives this big burp of fuel that comes out and just lands from about there to there, just a big splash. So, and it's really difficult to hear when it doesn't make that slowly getting higher pitch, stop. It doesn't really do that. And also, if you slow down the fuel fill, it doesn't really seem to make a difference on this big spurt of gasoline that comes out. And so, luckily, it doesn't stain the deck, but it does make a mess. And so what I do is I put the fuel fill in there, and I wrap a rag. I take a rag and roll it up, and I wrap it around here and push it up against the fuel fill. So the fuel fill's in. Take a rag, wrap it around there, jam it up in there. Then I'm filling, and then when it makes a big burp, and probably when you go out, it's probably full when you go out, and when you get back, then fill it up. That way we don't have a half a tank of air and a half a tank of fuel that causes the fuel to go bad. A couple other things, back corner of the boat over there, there's a little bitty hatch, and inside of that little hatch is the shower. So turn on the water pump, do the shower. If you need water, there's a couple other things right up here. This right here has, grab it from the center, you give a lift just like that, and that exposes up here another hatch that we'll go into in a second, and the water fill. So water fill right here, just open this up like that. Put the hose down there. Make sure every time you get onto a new boat, and if you don't know, just sniff the cap and make sure it doesn't smell like petrol. That tells you that you're not filling the petrol tank with water or the water tank with petrol. So you sniff the cap, yep, that's definitely water. Throw a hose in there. One of the things is when you fill up with a, you only put the hose in about that far. Some people, you'll see them, they'll jam that hose all the way down there, like this far into the tank, and you can over pressurize a tank that way. You can actually fill the tank faster than the air vent can, when the air vent's there. So only put the hose in about that far right there. That way, if the tank is full and you don't see it, it just pushes the hose out and you don't do any damage. Okay, so get that going. Down there. Okay, now we come to this hatch right here. And that hatch lifts up. And under here, a little bit more water. We got a couple fenders for tying off. We got a couple lines that are not really dock lines. It's just kind of extra lines down there. You should see we've got some dock lines coming that are should have eyes and stuff in them. That's our little water pump right there, and that's the little pressure valve thing that kind of keeps causing our piping to leak, and so we need to change that. I might get to that before we get out of here, maybe not. And so anyway, this is just kind of like a little catch-all storage, and if you have, there's a water gauge up on the console up top up there. If tells you how much water you have left. If you're driving along and you see it slowly going down, it means that you got the pressure pump on and it's leaking someplace into the boat. Okay, now we'll catch the galley area, and that will pretty much finish off our little talk. Okay, we'll come back here. Two more things to talk about. Housekeeping, as they call it. Okay, this opens up, and is a little galley right there. Somebody left the water right there. And so normally what would happen is you go to take off, you open this up, and then these tables flip up like this, and then you can put the ice chest down below. To take these down, you lift it up, and you give that a little lift. Did you see that? I'll do it again right here. See that? Okay. One thing about these tables that as soon as you have the tables up and you slide the ice chest under there, now people are sitting around, invariably somebody will come over here and start to lean against the table, talking back over here. Next thing you know, they're sitting on the table and it'll break off on the hinges, which it does like all the time, especially if you're not saying, hey, don't sit on the table. So what happens is these hinges will pull out because it's just into the end grain of the plywood. So what I do is every time it happens, I drill out with a like an 8mm drill, fill up the holes with epoxy. Wait until the epoxy turns rubbery, then lift up the table and put the screws into the rubbery epoxy. Let it kick overnight, and it's good for another trip. And so, not much more you can do because it screws into the end grain of plywood. So it isn't like super good to begin with. I've never actually seen that stove work, so I don't know that it would. So. But you know, people aren't trying to cook. But if you want to make a cup of coffee, that you might be able to get that going. Last thing is the head and the little area down here. So, okay, put the. Oh, and this is a child's life jacket, by the way. We try to keep two kids' life jackets on board. We had a kid in this one the other day, so it's you just roll it up here. You set it up like that. See, now it's back and ready for storage. That one looks like it needs a new zipper. Probably needs a new kid's life jacket. Okay, so Hey, and that's one thing when you if you're gonna go out, and just keep an eye on how many kids are out there. And oh yeah, we keep a knife out here too. We keep one of these, push that button, it pulls out. Snub blade, so like if somebody goes crazy, they can't stab everybody, but still it's good for fishing or if you got to cut a line. One time when you may have to cut a line is if you forgot about your bow line. Bow line washes, this is a common thing right here. Bow line washes over the bow of the boat, gets stuck in the prop, stalls the engine. Right now you're drifting, you can't tip up the engine because the bow line's holding the engine from tipping up, right? That's when you need to jump in the water with a knife, cut the line off of the prop, and everything will be just fine. So this is the head right here, and so in general we discourage use of heads. We encourage the swimming, you know, but if somebody's just got to give one little push right here, see that gets a little bit of water to flow. Then afterwards there's a little guy right down here, you kind of get the toilet adjusted, and then that's the flush right there. So water, flush. I hope you never have to use that, but if so, it's there, it's legal, it's ready to go. And anything else I need to cover? That's about it. Okay, well with that, hopefully that'll all be under 15 minutes. So a little 15-minute warm-up. At the end of the day, we I don't know, where did the cover go? We'll have to find that. Okay, at the end of the day, we turn this off by holding the power button for 3 or 4 seconds. That goes off. We take this guy, put that back on, flip the compass back, pull out the keys. Keys go back to the marina office. Walk in, say hi. This is for Sacs. One of the things oftentimes I'll do is close the hatch, and oftentimes just before I turn off the battery switch, I'll turn the bilge pump on and the blower on. The way it's set up right now is not the way I would like to see it set up. Right now it's set up so that the bilge pump is off of the battery switch, which really isn't the right way. Then we turn off the battery switch. Okay, see, now what happens is the next guy who comes on board, he can just walk on and turn the battery switch on, and then automatically the bilge pump and blower turn on automatically. Oh, one thing I forgot to do was tip up the engine. So I come over here and I'm going to tip up both engines. So the engine's really important. I don't know why people forget about it all the time, but anyway, try to remember, because otherwise those props are just down there getting grilled on. And that's about it. We put the last cover on and get ready for the next time we go out and have a great old time. Great boat, wonderful boat. Just would love to spend more time on this one. Okay, I see this one right here. I'm just going to make that little adjustment. Kind of like oftentimes one of the last things you do before you go, make sure that these chafe guard pieces are right in the center. That, you know, those little, and that's it. Take a look around, all looks good. Hopefully you'll enjoy the boat as much as I have. Thanks for watching.